Hey guys, welcome back to another edition of Inside Out Living. I hope you're doing well and so appreciative of you guys jumping on here with us, whether you're watching the live or watching the recording. Tonight we're going to talk about the second part of our series on momentum. If you missed last week's live, I'd encourage you to go back and watch that. Every Wednesday in our football program, all right, is mindset training. And every week we have a word for the week. And then Wednesday we come together and do small groups and where we give guys the opportunity to kind of share and it kind of gives them opportunities. They learn the skill of communicating and talking and speaking. And so each coach has a group. We break out for about 15 to 20 minutes. And then we come together as a team and we have about a 10-minute presentation discussion over whatever that word is for the week. And the word for this week is growth. And as we were doing it this morning, you know, I already had the material that I wanted to share with you tonight. I already had that together and I thought, you know, this would be a great lead in to what we're talking about tonight with momentum. And that is the word growth, because it's hard to sustain, it's hard to create momentum if we're not growing. So I want to begin with our scripture, and our scripture tonight is going to be the basis for all the content that we talk about tonight. And it comes from Matthew chapter 13. And I'm going to begin with verse 4, and it's the parable of the sower. And it says, as he scattered them across his field, talking about the seeds, some seeds fell on a footpath, and the birds came and ate them. Other seeds fell on shallow soil with underlying rock. The seeds sprouted quickly because the soil was shallow, but the plants soon wilted under the hot sun. And since they didn't have deep roots, they died. Other seeds fell among thorns that grew up and choked out the tender plants. Still other seeds fell on fertile soil, and they produced a crop that was 30, 60, and even 100 times as much as had been planted. Anyone with ears to hear should listen and understand. So before we get into the title of tonight's talk about closing the gap, I want to talk just a little bit about this scripture and kind of unpack these verses and look at how it's a direct correlation to our own journey and life path. So if you look at verse 4, all right, it talks about some seeds fell on a footpath and the birds came and ate them. So he's talking about the rocky path, you know, and in our own lives, you know, last week we talked about 7 areas of our life that to evaluate, to kind of reflect, we actually measured them on a scale from 0 to 10 where we're at. And, you know, chances are those areas that we didn't score quite as high on as we would like, you know, there's a chance that it may fall under one of these 3 paths, just like the seeds in the parable. You know, when you talk about the rocky path, you know, that's talking about the environment. That's talking about maybe it's the conditions, you know, that are surrounding whatever it is that we're trying to grow, whatever area in our life that is that we're trying to grow, you know. And as long as it's on that rocky path, it doesn't even have a chance to get into the soil, much less grow. So that's what verse 4 is talking about. And verse 5 is talking about seeds that actually make it to the soil, but they're in shallow soil, because underneath the soil there are rocks. And, you know, the way I view that verse is talking about comfort zone, because it talks about how they do sprout up, all right? But the first sign of adversity, it talks about in the scorching heat under the hot sun, they didn't have deep roots, so they died. So a lot of times we'll start something and not really like give it time to kind of develop those deep roots. And as soon as adversity, whatever it is, in whatever form it is, whatever it hits our way, then basically those areas we're trying to grow in, all right, we're going to get that attitude that, oh, it's a little uncomfortable, I'm having to get out of my comfort zone, And we don't give ourselves a chance to develop those deep roots. You know, we talk about on here all the time, you know, for growth to happen, if you think about a tree, if you think about building a house, a building, whatever it is, the first thing that has to happen is it has to go down. The foundation has to be set. We have to dig down, just like with any plant, anything, it has to go down first. The stronger the root system is, and the more developed the root system is, all right, the more potential it has of growing into a big, strong tree. Same thing with a house, same thing with a building, whatever it is. It's all about the foundation. You have to dig down deep. And that's actually, the law of that is the law of the skyscraper. The higher we want to go this way and grow, the deeper we've got to be willing to go down and dig down and build that foundation. So if we're trying to do that on shallow soil, if we're trying to find the easy way, a quick fix, a shortcut, oftentimes that's what happens. And then in verse 7, it talks about the seeds that fell among the thorns. And it says that they grew up and choked out the tender plants. You know, and the way that I see the thorns is that's kind of maybe the people around us. I know we said environment, but this is more about the people around us, our circle, the people that have direct influence on us. You know, they're either bringing us up, trying to raise us up, or unfortunately, they're trying to bring us down. There is no kind of even keel there. This one or the other. And you know, and I put this quote out before on my pages. And it really hit me when I saw it, is like, you know, if those that you spend the majority of your time with, if they're not encouraging you, if they're not trying to stretch you, if they're not trying to help you grow, you don't have a circle, you have a cage. They're keeping you in. And that's what the thorns do. You know, so the thorns, you kind of see that as kind of approval. You know, how many times do we like cut ourselves short or maybe limit our growth because we're worried about what somebody's opinion is of us, what somebody may say about it, what somebody may think. Hey, I'm trying this new thing over here, you know, and they look at it and go, why are you doing that? Why are you, well, you know, I don't understand. That's not who you are. You ever had anybody say that to you? That's not who you are. All right. How they know? They don't know who you are. All right. They don't, deep down, only you know. You and the good Lord know what you're about. All right. And what your purpose is. But a lot of times we'll let that kind of cloud our judgment, and it's just like those thorns, it'll choke us, and we feel it so much that we just kind of back off. And then the last one is really, if we know that's what we want to search for, and this is what gives us the best chance to grow, and those are the seeds that fall into fertile ground. You know, when you think about fertile ground, you know what it looks like. You know, people that are, you know, if you go through farmland, and I know this past weekend, we traveled through a lot of areas that was farmland, and, you know, they got corn growing, they got wheat growing, they got all that. And on the edges from the road, you could see the dirt, and you could just tell like how fertile that dirt was. It was dark, you know, you could tell it had moisture in it. All right. It just looked really, really fertile. And because of that, whatever the crop was that they were growing, it was flourishing. All right. Well, it's the same thing with us. You know, when we're on fertile ground, it's when we have that thirst for knowledge. It's when, you know, we have that connection. You know, maybe it's with others. More importantly, we have a connection with ourself. All right, with our inner self, and we're always looking for ways to get better. You know, that's just 3 examples of what fertile ground looks like, and how do we know when we're in fertile ground? You know, a lot of times we see fertile ground as thinking that it's got to go our way every time. All right, it's got to be a win every time. Okay, well, there's times where we may experience failure. Things may not go our way. All right, that doesn't mean that necessarily we're on a rocky path, shallow soil, or we're surrounded by thorns. All right, we may be in the most fertile ground there is. And if we stay in that fertile ground, all right, and we see failure as an opportunity to learn and get better, that's what makes it fertile. I had someone, you know, we talk about approval, but I had someone share with me, all right, a definition that they heard about rejection. Rejection is God's protection. You know, a lot of times in our journey, we have this great idea, or we're fired up about something, all right? But not everybody sees it that way. And when that happens, we can't help but feel a sense of rejection, you know? And if we're not careful, it'll affect our self-worth, how we view ourselves, all right? But the next time you get rejected or somebody tells you no, okay, I want you to think of it this way, all right? And this is what I learned this week, okay? Think of it as that is God hiding your talents and abilities from that person purposefully, because that person is not part of your destiny. I thought that was just powerful, a powerful way of seeing rejection. So I want you to keep that in mind. So let's look at the fertile ground real quick, and then we'll get into this map for closing the gap. So how do we stay in fertile ground? How do we get to fertile ground? Well, the first thing is we got to be intentional. All right. And we talked on here a couple of weeks ago about how we can have good intentions or we can be intentional. Good intentions or intentional, you know? I mean, everybody has good intentions. It's just like in our team room, excuse me, I'm going to cut this light off, hopefully. Can y'all still see me okay? Somebody let me know if that's all right, because I know that light is like right in my eyes. But when you ask guys on our team, or you ask any athletic team, it's like, who wants to win? Everybody's hand will go up, all right? But then when you get into the question of who's willing to put the work in, who's willing to prepare so that you have an opportunity to win, all right? May not be 100% hands go up, because over here, everybody has good intentions. We want to succeed, all right? But living that intentional life means that we're willing to put in the work. It means that we're willing to struggle. It means that we're willing to get our hands dirty and not afraid to mess up, because we know if we fall short, that's just an opportunity to learn and grow from it and get better. So that's the first thing, all right? And it's got to happen from the time we wake up to the time we lay our head on our pillow, all right? We can't pick and choose when we want to be intentional, all right? Second thing is to be in fertile ground, all right, is to make the choice to grow, okay? I mean, our life is composed of the choices that we've made, all right? Where you're at right now, where I'm at right now, is because of the choices that I made, not just from a physical standpoint, but where I am spiritually, where I am mentally, where I am physically, as far as my health goes, financially, whatever it is, all right? It's all based on the choices that we've taken. And look, there's been choices that I've made in my life that I thought that were, and I still believe that God put me in certain places, our family, where He wanted us to be, all right? And there's been times where it didn't work out quite like I had envisioned it to, all right? But that doesn't mean that we weren't in fertile ground. Because there's been a lot of times in my life where I've experienced failure, where I've experienced maybe, you know, things didn't work out like I wanted to. And as long as we keep the right perspective, and that's where we grow. That's where we have the greatest opportunity to grow. But when we're choosing to grow, all right, having the mindset that, hey, there's no options, okay? Because here's the thing. If we give ourselves options, what are we always going to do? When it gets tough, we're going to take the other option. We're going to go to plan B, correct? We are, all right? If there are options, okay, on the table, we set out with good intentions, and if we're not intentional, and as soon as it gets tough or challenging, all right, then we're like, oh, I got this other thing. I can back off because I got this over here I can fall into, all right? I can fall back on. Okay, so we got to be very careful of that. And then the third thing is being aware of who and what we're spending our time with. You know, we talked earlier, making sure that we're around people that are going to help us grow, that are going to push us, that are going to stretch us, that are going to love us, all right? That love us enough to tell us the truth, and love us enough, and we love them enough that we can be vulnerable. Completely vulnerable. And then also What are we watching? What are we listening to? Because those things affect us too, all right? Whether it's what's on the TV, whether it's the books that we read, whether it's the podcast, the YouTube videos, whatever it is, okay? All those can play a huge part in giving us an opportunity to grow, all right? So I hope you got some value out of that. Now, last week, all right, we talked about the wheel of life, okay? And as I alluded last week, this is not mine, all right? Full transparency, I'm always going to tell you when I get it from someone else, okay? Because that's basically what this is about. This isn't about me coming up with content every week. It's about things that I've experienced, that I've learned to share with others, okay? But this is the wheel of life, and this is from Tony Robbins, all right? And basically last week, what we did was there's 7 areas. There's spiritual contribution, all right? There's your physical body, emotional, all right? Or meaning of life, relationships, time, okay? And that's the one thing on here that we all have the same of, all right? We all have 24 hours in the day. Now, how we use those, okay, that determines the level of growth. Then it's work, career, and then it's your finances. And what we did was, this is 0, this is 10, okay? And I would encourage you to do this, all right? But you just kind of rate each area, all right? And then once we did that, this is what mine looked like. Okay, as you can see, it's not completely round, okay? If this, as I said last week, if this is a tire on my car, that's going to be a bumpy ride, all right? And a lot of times we kind of look around and wonder, man, why is this such a struggle? Why are things so hard and this, that, and the other, all right? Well, first off, life's meant to be a struggle. Now, but it's not, but we're not meant to suffer, okay? There's a big difference, all right? Just because we're struggling doesn't mean we're not in fertile ground and doesn't mean we're growing, all right? But you can imagine a tire on here and I'm going 100 miles an hour, it's really going to be bumpy, okay? And so I'm short. None of these are 10. They're all short, okay? So I've got a lot of gaps, all right, that I need to work on, okay? So what I want to share with you tonight is how do we close those gaps, all right? So basically, this is a gap map. And if this is something that you would like a copy of, okay, I'm kind of going to give you the Cliff Notes version of it tonight. But if this is something you'd like a copy of, message me, because I'm going to see if I can download this as a PDF, and I will share this out with you, okay? But here's the first thing. The first thing is you want to do your wheel of life, okay? And then you want to pick one area, okay? All right. Now, we can multitask, okay? But we can only focus on one thing at a time. All right. There's a huge difference. So just pick one area that you want to close the gap and you want to grow in. Okay. That's the first thing. All right. And then you're going to put down, where are you now? Are you a 2? Are you a 8? Are you a 5? Whatever it is. All right. So that's the first thing, is putting down where you at now. All right. And being real honest with ourselves. The second thing is you're going to put, where do you want to be? Okay. So if I'm a 4, all right. And we want to be really, look, obviously we want to be 10s on everything, but that is really, really hard. Okay. All right. But it's just about stacking up those daily wins. So if I'm at a 4, let's say that, I know I want to be at a 10, but realistically, all right, I want to try to get to an 8. Okay. And I don't think that's selling myself short. I think that's being realistic. All right. But here's what I'm going to do after that. When I decide where I want to be, then I'm going to describe, what is that going to feel like when I'm at that level? What is that going to look like? What is it going to feel like? What difference is it going to make in my current situation, in my current life conditions? All right. Because if we don't have a vision, all right, if we don't have a vision, we said last week in our scripture, those without vision, all right, the people perish. Okay. So we got to have a vision of where we want to be, but we also got to generate those feelings and emotions of what that's going to feel like. All right. Because that's what's going to keep us driven to try to get there. Okay. So those are the first 2 things. All right. And then the third thing, once we decide that, then we want to get laser focused, all right, on the path that we need to take, okay? And we want to be specific as we can be, all right? Because the more specific we are, the more intentional we're going to be, all right? The more intentional we're going to be, okay? And the more it's going to keep us focused, All right. There's a great quote from Jim Rohn that says, reasons come first, answers come second. We got to know our why first. We got to know, what is the purpose of this? What am I trying to reach? And why am I trying to get there? Before, a lot of times we put the cart before the horse. We're trying to find the answers, all right? But we really don't know why we're doing it, okay? And we get cluttered, and it feels like we're just running in circles and we're not making any progress, all right? So it's important that we write down our reasons first, and then we start looking for the answers, okay? So that's the third step, all right? The fourth step is, once we lay that out, now we got to get the right strategy and tools, okay? What's going to help us get there? You know, who do you know? Who is in your circle that can help you? Now, this is the thing that I find, because as a lot of you know, all right, I spent a lot of time learning, teaching, just living a healthier lifestyle is something that's made a huge difference in my life the last couple of years. All right, but what I found when I go into research is there's so much information out there. All right, and you got to be really, really careful who you get that information from. Okay. I mean, because I'll find something that they'll say this, and then something over here, whether it's a podcast or what, they're saying something completely opposite, all right? So you really got to make sure it's somebody that really knows what they're talking about. But the biggest thing is, have they lived it? Because it's one thing to say, yeah, do this, all right? Do this. This will help your financial state, all right? This will help you get healthier. This will help you lose weight, okay? If they haven't done it themselves, all right, then its chances are, that's probably not somebody you want to get advice from, all right? You want to look for somebody that's done it over the long haul, okay? And they've experienced that success, all right? But look for who can help you, okay? And what tools are out there. There are so many resources and things out there that can help us, no matter which area it is that you pick. So that's the fourth thing, is getting the right strategy, all right? And then the last one is, now we're ready to get into action. Now it's time to get in the game and play some offense, all right? Just put it into action, okay? Do the work. And I want to caution you, all right? And I'm not telling you guys anything you want to know, because I see Ashley's on here. I see Doug's on here. I see Landon's on here. I see my mom is on here. I see Tracy, my cousin's on here. I mean, all you guys, you guys inspire me, and I'm so appreciative for you guys being on here. And I see Bob is on here. He's a frequent viewer on here. But you guys knows what it's about. So it means so much for you guys to be on here. All right. But I'm not going to tell you guys anything you don't know. Okay. But maybe this is something that you can share with somebody that may help them as far as tonight's content. But when it comes to going into action, all right, have you ever had a time where you're just like fired up, like, yes, let's go, all right? And then the first sign of adversity, we start having second thoughts. We start going, boy, this is not what I envisioned. I don't know if this is the right thing or not. That's why it's so important that we get laser focused, that we get our strategy. Because look, there's going to be bumps in the road. It's not going to be smooth. But I tell you this, when you push through it and you get through it and you look back, all right, you're going to be so grateful. And the amount of growth that you've experienced and the amount that you've closed that gap, all right, it's going to be life-changing. It's transformational. But there's always going to be two voices in our head. And it's going to be a critic and it's going to be an advocate, all right? And that critic's going to work really, really hard, okay, to try to talk you out of it, to try to talk you down, to try to lessen your self-worth, all right? It's not so much about having confidence, because look, I can have self-confidence, but my self-worth may be way down here, all right? It's got to be the opposite. If I focus on my self-worth, the self-confidence will take care of itself, because I know that I can measure up. I know that I am worthy. I know that I add value, all right? But that critic's going to always, all right, try to pull against that. There's always going to be that pull, okay? So it's naive for us to think that that's never going to be there. I don't care what level we get to. It's always going to be there. And I posted something the other day. Hey, with every new level, there's a new devil, all right? It's every level of improvement, okay? All right, then there's going to be something new that's trying to bring us back down. And the closer we get to it, okay, the harder it is going to work at it, all right? I mean, if you believe in God and believe Jesus is who he said he is, then you have to believe in the devil. And I had a great Christian mentor tell me one time, I was going through some things, some struggling, with job and those types of things. And he said, look, one thing you can take comfort in is the devil doesn't mess with anybody, all right, that's not close to God, that's not close to a great life-changing opportunity. The ones he hammers are the ones that he knows that opportunity is right around the corner. And if I don't do something, all right, the devil's thinking if I don't do something to slow that down and to keep him from turning that corner, he's gone, all right? I can't mess with him anymore, okay? So take comfort in that. And then there's going to be the advocate, okay? And the one we feed the most, that's the one we're going to hear the most, all right? So that's the gap map, okay? And again, if this is something that you want a copy of, I'm going to try to upload it as a PDF, and just message me if it's something you want to take a look at, and I would love to share it with you. Thanks so much for being on, George. I appreciate you being on here tonight. I hope you guys have a great night and a great rest of the week, and we'll see you guys next time. Take care.